Gaming and everyday doing tasks on Linux is a topic that has been mentioned a lot, especially thanks to all the challenges or videos showing the experience. Those people did contribute to a lot of things by pointing out stuff that was good, stuff that needed change, and that something that wasn't available yet. Myself, I was interested in Linux for a quite long time, but in the end I couldn't fully commit to it, since every time I tried I would quit because one thing or more wasn't available, which would ruin my workflow. So this time I wanted to make a video on not how I spent my days moving to Linux, using it as main OS for a specific period, but rather on all my times and tries, and also experience that built my opinion on its current status. I want to talk about things that I liked, the good part of my tries to switch, the bad part of the switch, explaining why I couldn't fully commit to it, and of course the ugly truth that I hope won't turn out right. The video will be divided into 3 main parts, so make some tea or play it in the background. I hope you'll enjoy it and provide your own thoughts after watching it. Thanks. Now to start, first I'll explain which distribution I used with my reasoning for it. For these clips you will see, and my overall experience, I went with Nobara Official, which is basically Fedora Linux with tweaks made by Glorious Eggroll. It is equipped with everything I needed and what typical end user would require without, sitting in terminal or downloading everything, checking out if the requirements are installed, etc. etc. It's not 100% easy level. For that I would say Linux Mint or Ubuntu would be probably easier, especially Mint, or something like web browsing or just quick play if you want. Other than that, I was thinking about things like Manjaro, since I had some experience with it. It had one major perk, with I think also other Arch-based distros that I will talk about later. And also I was thinking of doing it on either GNOME or KDE version for Nobara, considering that these two desktop environments got their newest versions around that time. With that out of the way, I think we can go straight to the experience finally, and it was surprisingly good. As you can see on the footage, this was all taken from playing on Linux in games like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, Honkai Impact Third or Assetto Corsa Competizione. All of these games would have at some point some problems on Linux, with either accessory needed, some problems with software, or just troubles with anti-cheat. But now they work great, as you see. I'm not using more popular Steam games, since those were at some point presented at some other channels in performance comparisons, so I picked the 4 that I play regularly and could have some issues in my opinion. I wanted also to pick those 4 since I wanted to present you that not everyone wants to play, let's say, new titles because they weren't hooked on them, just more specific cases. If you want to see if certain game works on Linux, you could visit ProtonDB to see if any of those titles you like work. There are games that work out of the box, some that need a big bit of tweaking, some maybe patch or something, and some that are straight up unplayable, with also comments and hardware specs of users. If the game is not on Steam but on Epic, you could also ask on Linux Gaming subreddit, and besides there's also dedicated launcher for games from Epic Library and more. On ultrawide 1440p with all settings to max, as you can see on recordings, the gameplay is smooth. Testing these games in casual walkthroughs or more intense moments in fights didn't seem to be laggy or crashing at all. With everything on max, both Genshin and Honkai kept their capped 60 FPS, while Honkai Impact Third Part 2 kept their 120 FPS. What's more interesting, when playing Assetto Corsa I did happen to plug the wheel, with use of program called Oversteer and also yet another package dedicated for Thrustmaster wheels, it did work perfectly. Force feedback for me feels a bit more aggressive here rather than on my Windows instance, like you feel more resistance, but that you could possibly tweak, and for that current time it didn't bother me since I pretty much liked it. If I were to mention one issue, when working with this script when I was writing the first version and recording clips for the first time, when I had to finally review them, while the video was smooth, the sound was quite choppy. It was pretty weird occurrence, but on these recordings for the second time I didn't experience the same issue. That was quite interesting. Minor issue that I think did resolve itself. I did mention games, but what about everyday things? These work pretty good. I'll mention the experience on Nobara official KDE, but I can assure you, you can do the same on KDE stock or GNOME as well, just with different software or different methods on different distros as well. In that case, I did pick my favorite software from Discover or Flatpak App Store, like Discord, GIMP, OBS, minus Steam because it was already there and I needed only to switch one setting to make it work on Linux. When it comes to desktop environment, after installing Nobara I did receive Plasma 6 update, which was neat in my opinion. I didn't expect to get actually on Nobara Plasma 6. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. When it comes to Discord, there were some issues for me, mainly with screen sharing, but when I wanted to try to share the screen nowadays, around the time I was writing the script, and me and my friends were talking on voice chat, I did try to share, and it worked nicely. I think it works well with applications or Windows normally, but when you want to share your monitor screen, then you get basically nothing. It might be the only issue I can think of. Also, if you are wondering about any of the additional plugins like Vencord, these are available too. Interesting thing I noticed, which was accidental around the time I was writing that, is printing. Yeah, printing was really important to me around that time. I did have to print some labels to send the package, and when I tried to do it on Windows, I did encounter some troubles, not sure whatever the reason was, but basically I wasted a lot of time with drivers, replugging, restarting, while on Linux it recognized the printer and I could finally print the very important stuff I needed. Overall, I would say, based on everything, the good things I did mention, I would say that the experience so far was pretty good. Everything worked straight out of the box. I liked it, and I didn't have much issues, and I didn't need to go into the terminal every time I needed to fix anything, because it worked basically. Or eventually, if I needed to go into the terminal, as you can see right now, when I was configuring, I think, the oversteer software, you can see that I was just copying and pasting all the commands that I needed, and this was basically what I had to do. And for, let's say, end user, most of those things would basically work out of the box and they wouldn't have trouble transitioning. What I should rather say is that not every end user would switch possibly, because the ratio of tech-savvy people to non-tech-savvy people is favoring more towards that second side. While desktop Linux tries to be as easy as it can be, it might only bring over people that are willing to, you know, learn how to use it. So let's say if you are trying to learn Linux and trying to learn something about your computer to at least don't break anything upon first command, I think maybe additional 10% would come over. I'm not sure. However, not all things are always that bright. There are some issues that need to be addressed, issues that still persist from many of those experience videos, and issues that I encountered and also my thoughts that also need to be addressed that would really benefit for future years. Starting from obvious, of course, the first one is gaming. There are still titles that won't let you run your game on Linux because of anti-cheat or because it's forked and needs some tweaks in upcoming Proton patch. Over these 2 years, a lot of games were fixed into working state. For example, I don't remember in 2022 being able to play Honkai Impact, and now it's possible thanks to community and the things they do. The same though goes other way around with anti-cheats, more and more intrusive and covering more games, it might be harder to play some games. Until around end of 2023 you were able to play League of Legends casually with some tweaks. Now that League is also using Vanguard, you won't be able to, at least I haven't experienced someone trying it. And it's not only Riot Games titles. Battlefield 5, you know, the game about World War II or something they advertised it as, also switched to another anti-cheat, preventing Linux players from playing it. And something that is worth mentioning, this game over the last few weeks has been peaking a lot on Steam charts. You can even see that this trend was starting from November and December of last year. So it really sucks that the support for this game is gone too. Another one that is still unplayable is Rainbow Six Siege, another game where over last month player base doubled and we still haven't gotten any solution for it. I would also address some issues that for the future would benefit a lot of people and me as well. Because when switching to Linux you really need to make some important choices and workarounds to have really similar experience like you had. While switching to AMD is not necessary cause you can run both Intel and Nvidia stuff, it is more comfortable to use just AMD. Microsoft stuff won't work, or at least most of it, like Office package, but there you have other word processing software like WPS Office, OnlyOffice, FreeOffice or LibreOffice. Though, two things that won't work for certain. The first one is of course full Adobe suite. It won't work and won't be supported, though there's online version of Photoshop, but I would rather want desktop version too, to complete. If you're a graphics designer, you usually use stuff like Corel or Adobe stuff, and those aren't there. Sure, GIMP and Inkscape would work too, but majorly would rather stick to Adobe. And other that is more important to me is DaVinci Resolve, and it works, but it has some issues. Nobara has some fixes for beginning, but when you try to move over the video on the timeline and use it, well, it doesn't work. If I remember correctly, that's a known issue because it only supports Nvidia's encodings and it didn't want to even register things I recorded through AV1. So in other way, I didn't want to screw my desktop experience because of Wayland on Nvidia, and yet I got screwed by not being able to edit videos on Linux because of my AMD card. Fuck my life. People have workarounds by converting the file, but none worked for me. Things get interesting when I try to convert the same file on Manjaro or other Arch-based distro. After converting it, it works and I can edit it and render. I'm not entirely sure what could be the cause for it, but definitely it is really weird. So in current situation I have pretty good distro that I'm comfortable with, but I cannot use one of main things to make videos. Then someone can ask why not use Kdenlive. That's way worse option, and for someone who likes to make videos, who spends quite some time switching between programs from HitFilm to some free other ones to resolve, and I feel most comfortable with it at the moment, as well as probably I would feel with Adobe Premiere. This is basically my line I don't want to cross, because then I have to record it on Linux, or I have to record on Windows, edit in Windows, and spend some time also in Windows waiting for upload. The experience then on Linux is non-existent if I have to do everything on Windows. I would say it like this: why I consider Linux as a really good platform with most of tools probably ready, some companies aren't willing to support it fully, probably because of support or due to how complex their programs are, have licensing issues, or just it's too much of a trouble to set up a team to care of Linux and handling the issues. And that's my biggest issue that I leave for discussion, because this topic could be interesting. By this I should rather mean the reason might vary. Either it's one of those mentioned by me, or the reason might be completely different that I didn't think of. Because yeah, there's a ton of reasons and issues that could plague one software to work 100% perfectly like on Windows. So the developers wouldn't bother with it, basically. Until we don't know the real issue, the real reason, because maybe they don't want or something. We cannot know if they are working on it or not, or if they are willing to. The ugly truth of that is that the fact, despite having those 4% in desktop share, there are some still problems that plague Linux, while for someone who's only playing games or in Linux, or does some coding, or just browse the internet while chatting on Discord, it might not be a problem to switch, omitting the fact when they are met with unplayable title, they can just not play it because they couldn't care less. Either way, the best representation of Linux in all of its content, I should say, is of course Steam Deck, which is gaming handheld console, where I think majority of people using it use it only to play games rather than use it for the stuff I mentioned. And for solely gaming reason, Linux is great in my opinion. There are pretty safe and good switch, but if your needs are highly specific, for example mine, where video and graphics editing are important to me, because let's say I'm using specific tools to get my degree, finish my uni, and work with those programs, because my, let's say, employer requires them, the Switch, at least for now, is quite a downgrade. Unfortunately, people don't care about what they are using much, and wouldn't even switch unless they would get some kind of wake-up call. Windows 10 in just a year and few months in 2025 will lose all of its support with only some security updates left, I think. And since introduction of new version, people got swarmed with ads to switch to that new version for quite some time, I think few months, maybe a year. And Windows 11 will probably get more and more stuffed with AI, something that is so useless because most of it is just an applet for a website rather than something baked in. Knowing Microsoft's record of trying to implement something only for few percentages of people to use it and then abandon it like they did literally this year with Windows subsystem for Android, myself and probably others wouldn't want another useless thing only to be deleted in few years, because that's a lot of work that's getting obsolete. As bad as it sounds, it can only get worse when they would introduce Windows 12 or something else as a subscription, like some rumors claimed as something to happen. And by those rumors I would definitely take it with a distance, because I think it wouldn't happen because it would hurt them a lot. Revoking our licenses, or just straight up saying that you have a subscription now for Windows. I think Microsoft wouldn't want this, because people probably would realize that paying to use your computer that you have already bought at store, or you have bought parts at store, and then having to pay additional fee to use your system wouldn't be good. All in all, I would say I enjoyed the experience with it, from installing to setting it up to working how I wanted with some exceptions. The gaming aspect and everyday tasks definitely a plus, I have nothing to say bad about it after using it. The amount of issues and my thoughts what needs to be improved is also huge, and when 2025 comes around I hope we could finally also have more companies and their software supported on Linux, so that I could switch over completely too. That said, again, I learned a lot from Linux over this time and it was a good experience. I might use that opportunity to come back every year or two to Linux to see how things have changed. With that said, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.